What's up, guys? In this video, what I'm going to be doing is talking about a very specific state, Florida, and the challenges you will face when protecting your investment real estate in the state of Florida. All right, let's get started. Okay, so when it comes to investing in Florida, there are a few challenges that real estate investors need to be aware of in order to protect their property so they don't result in a situation where they're going to get hit with transfer taxes or increase their overall property taxes on their portfolio. And so what I'm referring to is that in Florida, when we have real estate, let's say we got a few properties there, and we would like to protect this Florida real estate, a lot of individuals out there on the internet, entity mills, as I like to refer to them, would probably tell you to set up a limited liability company, set up an LLC, and deed your property into the LLC. Now, you know, if you watched my videos before that, I talk a lot about limited liability companies and how great they are when it comes to asset protection. But there's a challenge when it comes to using this particular tool in Florida, and that has to do with the property taxes in Florida and the transfer taxes in Florida. So what am I referring to here? Well, let's assume this property right here was acquired in 2017, and I acquired the property for $200,000. Now, I have on that property a mortgage of $150K mortgage, and at this point in time, the property value here in 2024 has increased to $575,000. So this property's almost gone up or tripled in overall value. So if I was to take that property right there and transfer it into a limited liability company, in Florida, what would occur is they would look at the debt on the property itself, okay, and then I would pay a doc stamp on this debt that's associated with the property. It's a transfer tax. So I'm going to pay a tax by just merely deeding the property into the LLC. The other problem you're going to run into when you put this in here, you're going to get hit with a second hidden tax there. And that has to do with the increase in property value from 200 to 575. See, in Florida, each property, if it's an investment property, is capped on how much Florida can raise the overall property value for property tax purposes on an annual basis. And that property tax cap is 10% a year. So for example, in 2018, if my property increased from $200,000 to $240,000, for property tax purposes, they cannot raise it more than $220,000. Okay, so the next year, maybe it's 242. So you see what I'm talking about here? It just keeps going up, but it's max 10%. So in 2024, my property's at 575. My property taxes in 2024, 7 years, may be sitting at 360,000. So I'm paying taxes on this, but if I transfer it to an LLC, they'll raise it to this right here. So that is the challenge we face with Florida real estate. So how do we fix that issue? How do we eliminate these taxes? Well, if you've watched some of the videos, I've talked about this in the past. The way you eliminate this problem in Florida is you do not use LLCs for properties that either have debt on them. So if your property has debt on it in Florida, you're not going to use an LLC. Takes the LLC right out of the mix. If the property doesn't have debt, or if it does too, it doesn't matter, but assume it doesn't, and you bought it more than, say, 3 years ago, then most likely putting it into the LLC, you're going to incur that step up in the property taxes, and that could cost you some money. So whenever I'm considering working with a investment property in Florida, I'm looking at the overall structure and making a determination as, hey, will this moving that property into an LLC, create a taxable event for the investor? If the answer is yes, then a great option for you is to use a Florida land trust. Okay, so a Florida land trust, what makes it unique other than, say, any of the other 49 states, is that in Florida, when you put an asset into a land trust, you have asset protection. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're the beneficiary of your Florida land trust, if somebody were to sue, a tenant, for example, were to bring an action against the trust because it is the owner of the property, the Florida statute protects you as the owner of that trust. They cannot look through the trust and bring you in personally to that lawsuit. Whereas if we set this same trust up in Tennessee, for instance, or Illinois, then you could go down and hold the beneficiary personally liable for the claims against the trust. So I like this aspect that Florida land trusts provide asset protection. So you don't need to use LLCs there. However, the other benefit is that when you move property that's encumbered by a mortgage into a trust, doc stamps are no longer a concern for us. Okay, so this goes away. Now, here's where you need to understand this tool as well from the property tax cap. So back to my example again, if this property had appreciated from $200,000 to $575,000, and I put it into the Florida Land Trust, it may or may not be exempt from the tax reset for the property tax purposes. What is going to be determinative of that? You determine that based upon who is the trustee. Okay, so this is where we can run into some issues if you want anonymity. So for example, if Kevin owned this house right here and Kevin decides he wants to set up a Florida land trust, all right, for his property, but at the same time, Kevin does not want his name on title. He wants anonymity. The one way in which Kevin would typically structure this type of deal is to use a nominee trustee. Maybe Kevin says, hey, Clint, I want you to be my trustee. So when I transfer title into this Florida land trust here, title will be held Clint Coons Esquire as trustee of the Gator Trust. All right. So then Kevin is no longer listed on title when that property is inside of there. But the problem now in Florida is that the counties will look at that transfer and they'll say, well, Kevin transferred legal title to Clint because the trustee of a trust holds legal title, and they can hold equitable title as well. But generally speaking, when you transfer title to a trustee, they hold bare legal title. Now, that is what gives rise to a tax cap reset. So in that example, if Kevin had that property at $200,000 with a $150,000 mortgage right here, and he moves it in here, no doc stamps, as I stated here, but you will get a tax cap reset to the current fair market value because you're using a nominee trustee. You know, if Kevin wanted to set up an LLC to be his trustee, a Wyoming LLC, same issue. The only way Kevin can get around this is Kevin has to use his name. So when he transfers it in, he'd have to say Kevin as trustee of the Gator Trust. So when you're setting up property in Florida, if you want anonymity, it will come at a price for you. That is, typically it's going to increase your property taxes if that property's gone up in value and it far exceeds its current tax rate. So be aware that when you're setting these structures up for your investment real estate in Florida, you're going to probably have to be your own trustee. If you have property that's more than, say, 4 years old, and the properties, of course, has increased significantly, well, maybe anonymity is not there. Now, I've worked with a lot of people where that is not a concern. They weigh they weigh it out and they say, well, looking at how much more I'm going to have to pay in property taxes on an annual basis, I weigh out the benefit of getting the anonymity. Many people that we work with will choose to go with the anonymity, and they'll use myself or another attorney in our firm as their nominee trustee on their trust to give them that privacy, as well as the legal protection that comes from having an attorney there as your trustee. So if you're investing in Florida, I know this is a niche video in the sense that it just speaks to one state, but there's a lot of our clients that we work with and investors that come to us for structuring that invest in that particular state. Beware of these issues and make sure you're setting up right so you don't end up having to pay a bill that you never saw coming. If you like the video, be sure to hit the like button. And of course, if you're not yet a subscriber, what the heck's taking you so long? Now's your opportunity. Take care.